Welcome to Mining Now, everyone. I'm your host, Jared Downey, and today we have back on the show Glencore Technology. I'm not retaking that intro. People need to know I can't talk sometimes. My goodness. Anyway, Glencore Technology is back on the show. Very interesting. It's kind of a presentation, but it's like a side-by-side comparison of similar products in the industry. So we're going to jump into it. We're going to have Carter Lawrence. He is a metallurgist at Glencore Technology. Carter, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. Very excited to be here and talk about the Jameson Cell.
Yeah, we're going to dive into it. Sorry, I just wanted to first set up the parameters of this presentation because you guys, you took a bit of a unique approach on this one.
Yeah, we did. So the idea kind of come around probably close to 2 years ago now. We realized that sort of a document or even a webinar, nothing really existed that sort of provided an objective look at all of the flotation technology on the market. Most of the time, it's sort of, each company has its own sales pitch, shows the best of the best, not really looking, digging in the weeds, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And so it sort of started off initially as an internal document, actually, because even some of our own metallurgists were kind of like, hey, what about this technology? What's happening with this? We've heard clients mentioning this one. And so from there, it sort of started, and then it became where we thought, no, we should actually be delivering this to EPCMs, like engineering companies, clients, and kind of whoever wants to see it.
So did it start off as a presentation, and then didn't you do like a webinar with it or something like that?
Yeah, so it started off, like I said, it originally was going to be sort of an internal document, and then it became sort of, maybe we'll actually share this document, and then it became, actually, let's do a webinar. And so, yeah, and then it did turn into a webinar that we delivered to, I think it was a couple of hundred clients, consultants, pretty much, like I said, whoever wanted to watch at the end of last year.
Yeah, and now you're on a show that 50,000 people are going to see it.
Exactly, yeah.
But actually, before we get into all that, I usually do a little bit of an intro. What is your role with what's sort of the overall job description, and what's your day-to-day with Glencore?
Yeah, so I'm a senior solutions metallurgist at GT, and so essentially the solutions team, we're kind of on the front lines. We do a lot of the intros with clients, stuff like this, conventions, a lot of the early test work, early sizing, and so yeah, sort of dealing with a range of issues, range of clients, but yeah, basically dealing with all that initial stuff right up to when it becomes, when we get an order for a piece of equipment.
I'm always interested in this when a technology like the Jameson Cell, when you're at like a trade show event or you're doing a talk, how many people will come up to you and go, "What is this?" I'm going to not include like students. The students, you see them walking around the events with the backpacks, and it's which is always fun to see them there. But I'm going to not include them. I'm talking about people that are in the industry. How many people come up to you and go, "What is this?"
Yeah, I'd say it varies depending on the region, and that's one thing that we've really been focusing on lately is expanding our reach. Like in Australia, for example, I would say you'd find very few people in the industry who don't know what a Jameson Cell is.
Yeah.
But then we go to places like South America. We've recently moved into India, and a lot there you'll get a huge amount of people who are like, "What is this?"
Don't even know.
That's right, or they've heard maybe one or two things about it. It's sort of in the background, but certainly not something they were actively considering or really interested in. So it's definitely something that we're focusing on, is getting the word out and expanding into new regions as well.
So somebody in that field in, let's say, India might know of sort of the tech concept of the technology, but they don't know the branding of it, the details, the specifications, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that, or they may have heard of it in like a real niche sort of duty. For example, the Jameson Cell is kind of got its start in fine coal flotation, and so they might go, "Oh, that piece of the Jameson Cell floats coal, doesn't it?" But they don't know the full range of what it can do and sort of all of its abilities and benefits.
Let's talk about our heavy industry tour brought to you by Orica Digital Solutions, leading drill and blast into a new era with next-gen Shot Plus. With market-leading design tools and predictive modeling capabilities, NextGen Shot Plus equips drill and blast professionals to effectively improve blast designs and achieve optimal outcomes. Click below to learn more about NextGen Shot Plus. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's heavy industry tour.
SafeGauge specializes in innovative safety solutions, ensuring precision and reliability when conducting routine heavy vehicle maintenance. Their award-winning Safe Test range ensures workplace safety and efficiency. Their technology allows live testing to be completed up to 100 meters away, removing technicians from the line of fire and eliminating live work. SafeGauge, work smart, stay safe. Visit safegauge.com today. The mining industry is evolving. Efficiency and sustainability are more important than ever. Drawing on decades of expertise, Aderco's innovative fuel additive enables you to decarbonize your operations without sacrificing performance. Lower emissions, protect your engines, and save on fuel expenses, all with one simple solution. Choose Aderco, the smart choice for sustainable, profitable mining, because you can save money while making a positive impact. Visit aderco.com to learn more.
Well, let's get into this then. Let's start. Okay, so let's go into the goal of the webinar. You broke everything down. What were sort of the main things you were looking at in comparisons?
So I guess we first looked at like the history of each technology. So kind of going into, the background, how long's it been around, how many installations does it have? It's sort of any interesting information, how well established it is. That's sort of a key. That's pretty much the first thing that people want to know, right? Is in mining is they don't want to install something that's unproven. So basically, how proven is it? We looked at things like the abilities of the technology, so what sort of particle size range it can do, what duties it can be installed in, where is it proven in those duties. We looked at the footprint, so how much space does it take up, if you want to build a full concentrator, how much room are you going to need. CapEx and OpEx, of course, we touched on that. And some of the ESG benefits as well. So, how is it on the environment? What sort of benefits does it have for things like water consumption, energy consumption? Basically kind of everything that if I was an engineering company or a client, I would want to know.
So what brands did you, there's a few competitors, there's older companies. You already mentioned like how long established the company and the technology is. What companies did you end up bringing in for the study?
So we kind of, the initial ones, and which is sort of the base for comparison, is the mechanical flotation cell. So your stock standard tank with an agitator in it. Yeah. Wide range of companies, very widely installed. Then we looked at the column cell, again, sort of very well known, very widely installed. Obviously the Jameson Cell. We looked at the DFR, the direct flotation reactor, which is from a Canadian company, Woodgrove. The reflux flotation cell, which is from FLS. The Concord cell, which is from Metso Autotech. The Hydrofloat, which is from Erie's, and the Stack cell, which is also from Erie's. So kind of that really covers probably 95% of what's on the market, other than maybe something super niche.
Who is Savannah Equipment? Savannah Equipment Limited is a buyer and seller of new, used, and refurbished industrial equipment with a focus on mining and construction. They find, market, and sell surplus and used equipment. Does the equipment need work? They can refurbish. Is there something you can't find? They source those hard-to-find items. Selling equipment? They buy, consign, and broker equipment and asset packages. Need equipment moved? Savannah Equipment manages logistics for worldwide delivery. Surface and underground ore processing, concentrating, and refining plants and equipment, power generation and electrical, pump, material handling, alluvial placer gold mining, recycling, and much more. If you need to buy, sell, find, refurbish, or move equipment, you need Savannah Equipment. Savannah Equipment. More equipment every day. Visit them at savannahEquipment.com. As heavy machinery specialists for mining, SMS Equipment knows performance, like the performance they achieve together in a partnership dedicated to the success of their mining customers. At SMS Equipment, they're more than machines from trusted brands. They're the people beside you today and every day, bringing industry-leading technology and expertise to your mining operation. Because the right partnership makes everything possible. SMS Equipment, partners in your possibilities. Discover what's possible at smsequipment.com. Did you know cementitious binders can be responsible for up to 70% of the total GHG footprint of mine backfilling processes? Now you can replace up to 50% of the binder in your mine backfill operations with Graybond, Graymont's new low-carbon cementitious binder. This lime-based alternative binder maintains a 40 to 70% lower GHG footprint compared to typical cement and can adapt to varying mine conditions without compromising performance. Learn more about Graybond at graybond.com.
So, I mean, some of these are really, like the Aries one there, I mean, these are really established products, right?
Yeah, like the Eries, for example, the stack cell and the Hydrofloat, they've been around for maybe 15 or so years. But then you do have some more new technologies as well, like the reflux flotation cell, that's only a few years old. Concord cell's a couple years old. The Nova cell is basically completely new, pretty much uninstalled. And then you've also got like your mechanical cells, which have been around for north of 100 years. So really, really wide range.
Is the spec on them, like understanding how these products work so you can actually do a legitimate comparison? Was that somewhat of a challenge?
It definitely was. And that was part of, I think part of what took preparing the presentation so long is that I had to actually get a full understanding myself of how all of these different technologies work, find the research papers on them. Look into, that, like you just said, how they work and what you have to understand how they're going to work to understand what their benefits and limitations are going to be. So it definitely was a bit of a challenge.
Do they kind of fall into, is there kind of like three buckets of how they work across the brands that maybe you could just sort of walk the audience through, and we can bring up some images and that just so that we have a sort of a baseline of what we're actually talking, just in terms of technology that we're talking about?
Sure. So you have sort of your more conventional style technology, which is basically, like I said, a tank with a agitator, and the mechanical cell falls in there, as well as the Erie stack cell. It has a few different sort of changes to make it smaller and stuff, but it is essentially a conventional style technology. You then have pneumatic flotation, which is where you have the Jameson cell, you have the Concord cell, the DFR, the reflux flotation cell. They're sort of those high intensity cells. And then you have the Hydrofloat and the Nova cell, which is for ultra coarse particles. So like, up to a millimeter size particle. And then the column cell is sort of a little bit in a league of its own, where it's a very, very large, very tall cell, which uses basically its height as the separation mechanism. So it's sort of in its own category.
Like, how long has the Jameson cell been around?
So the Jameson cell has actually been around for around 35 years now.
Okay.
So it's out of the high intensity cells, it's far and away the most established and proven. It was the sort of the first cab off the rank, and so it was came about around the mid 80s. So it's been around for a long time. And
the now I'm drawing a blank. Sorry, that you said the open style. What's the old style of them?
Oh, so basically just your conventional tank cell.
The tank cell, yeah. That's been around for what, like 100 years or so?
Yeah, so the mechanical cell, like the tank cell, is sort of the old faithful, right? It was the original flotation cell, and it's, like you just said, it's been around for 100 years, so it's very well established, very well studied, and it's sort of the benchmark, if you know what I mean. People know its limitations, they know how it works, they know exactly what they're going to get, and so that's why it's sort of still the dominant technology.
What are the limitations?
The main limitation with it, well, I guess there are a few. In terms of performance, because it's not a high-intensity cell, it doesn't generate very small bubbles like something like a Jameson cell. And so particles below 20 micron, your ultra fines, it really struggles with. And that's becoming I guess a crucially important thing as mines become basically ore bodies become more difficult to mine.
Right.
Particles are getting finer and finer. The companies have to grind super fine. And so we're finding more and more that these sites are going, hey, the conventional cell just won't do what we need it to do.
The big question is, in terms of proven in the field, and maybe we'll talk a little bit later about some of these models that are maybe newer. Are they actually installed? Are they tested in a lab? Like, where are they sort of at in terms of production? But how would, let's say, a Jameson cell compared against the mechanical? ones in terms of actually out in the field, installed, running?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we really highlighted in the webinar is that, yes, we're not claiming that we have as many installations as a mechanical cell because nobody does.
Right.
But like I said, we do have 35 years of experience now. We've been installed 500 times. So the Jameson Cell is very well studied and very well established. And so that's what one of the things we want to highlight is one of the main reasons why tank cells win a lot of bids, to be honest, is that, like I said, an engineering company, they know what they're going to get. Even if that is, they have some downfalls, they're going, hey, if I put these in, I know exactly what I'm going to get.
Yep.
And we want to kind of get the word out there that, well, with the Jameson Cell, you know what you're going to get as well. We're very well proven, and we have a lot of data to back us up.
How often do you think, out of 5 projects, how often is it just the case where you got an engineering firm? I remember doing this. I got involved for a little while, and we were doing fiber optic cables. Helping bring that to the market, not successfully, I should mention, and getting a new product, even though it was actually in this case it was pretty much identical, or it was identical. Getting it spec'd into these projects was a big hurdle, like a real big hurdle. So, is that sort of? I mean, I don't think the Jameson Cell. I mean, I've seen your data. We've done another episode on it. Pretty well. We should bring that up and link it for people to watch, sort of that one, because that really goes into sort of the weeds on its design and things like that. But there's not really question about use case. it's very proven in that sense. How much of is it that challenge, that spec in?
Yeah, like a very significant portion. What we have found is that over the last, I don't know, probably 5 to 10 years, we've become very well established and accepted in the sort of the ultra fine flotation. Like I said, the conventional cells can't do it. And so what we find now is a lot of projects is we'll get in they'll say, hey, we're going to install you in the cleaning circuit. But then they go, yeah, but the roughing circuit, no, that sort of coarser particle, we're going to stick with the mechanical cells because, like I said, they kind of have that, hey, we know what we're going to get with the mechanical cell, and maybe the Jameson Cell won't give us the same performance, where we've actually proven that not only will you get equivalent performance, often you'll get better performance plus all the other benefits.
Okay, so let's get into this then. So on the Coarse side, who handles, out of the what you've looked at, who handles that part of it the best?
Like in terms of being established, and I guess well known is the mechanical cell. Like I said, they're established. They work very well. They everything's they operationally they're okay. But the Jameson Cell has also been proven to work very efficiently in that size fraction as well.
What range is it? What coarse range are we talking about?
So essentially, in like it does vary based on the mineral, but in copper, up to that 300 micron range. Generally, it's like maybe let's say 80 to 300 micron. So before you regrind.
Okay.
So that size range, and then there is the newer technologies as well, like that are trying to break into that space, like the reflux flotation cell, the DFR, things like that. But in terms of proven, probably not there as on the level that the Jameson Cell is yet.
So this is actually something I wanted to get into because I think I might even have a misconception about this. How does the Jameson do in the, let's say, that 100 to 350 range?
Yeah, look, it does depend on the mineral, but in let's say a base metal like a copper, we've basically proven that up to around that 300 to 350 range, the Jameson Cell is completely effective. You don't lose any recovery, and obviously you then get the added benefit of it's also good down to the sub 20 micron range, like down to maybe 4 or 5 micron, where those conventional cells struggle below 20 micron. Extremely effective at that range. So you're basically guaranteed that you're going to get the same performance as a mechanical cell, if not better, plus all the benefits of using a high intensity cell where you end up with far less units, the ESG benefits, things like that. So very effective in roughing, and you're not the only person with that misconception that it can only do ultrafine particles, where it can definitely do the full range, basically.
Okay, and I just to sort of drive this point home. So there's not, and pardon the ignorance on this. This is not like a a cone in a jaw where there's a secondary crushing system and something like that. You wouldn't use the Jameson. There's no need to use it for the fine because it can handle the coarse, right? Or have you seen those situations? Would there be any case study or any application where that would make sense?
So it's basically an all-rounder. So no matter what duty you want to do, like even if it's a full concentrator, we now have the Jameson Concentrator,
right?
Where you have roughing and cleaning. So roughing and then recleaning, or then regrinding and then cleaning.
All in one unit?
Yes, you can do this. Basically, you would have a rougher unit producing, which would then, that concentrate would be reground. Then you would have a cleaning unit, but it's the same Jameson cell. So we don't have, a cleaning unit, a roughing unit. They're all the same cell because the technology works across the entire range.
Wow. Yeah. So that gets into that. Okay. Actually, I don't want to jump ahead here because I want to get into a couple of these. So now in the comparison where I'm going to go the 20 to 100 micron,
yep.
Then who starts to play in that space?
Yeah, so look, I would say that pretty much every flotation technology, other than your sort of more niche ultra coarse stuff like your HydroFloat, all the rest of them will play in that space. That's sort of bread and butter stuff.
Right.
And most technologies are, if you're going to call yourself a flotation technology, you can float that range. So we found that that range, most technologies can perform, or at least claim to. A lot of the newer tech, they have the sort of lab studies, maybe a bit of pilot work, but not a large number of installs. But yeah, your mechanical cells, your Jameson cells, they can all operate in that range.
So when you're saying these companies, they're trying to build towards full production, they're just putting these units out in as pilot plants and things like that?
Yeah, so generally when a technology kind of comes onto the market, the company that has that technology will chase a site that's willing to almost after they prove it in the lab. Of course, you'll have a lot of lab work. You generally will fund studies, things like that. It will then move into where you build a small unit that you'll generally try and get permission from a company to let you work on site. And that's where a lot of those the newer technologies are sort of at now, where they've worked their way onto sites. They've got some papers, but they haven't worked into that commercially installed, well-proven phase yet. So, just basically newer, growing technologies.
Okay, so if that's sort of the bread and butter space, what other metrics other than performance then are we looking at? Then does that get into footprint, ESG? Like, is that where the value competition starts kind of going?
Definitely, you'll get into your footprint, your ESG, your CapEx and OpEx, which often comes from the footprint or is largely driven by it.
Right.
And then things as well like how easy is it to operate? How will it be for our operators, especially when you're something that's differing from the norm, like when the mechanical cells are the norm. People want to. A lot of sites want to know, well, how will it be for our operators? How easy is it to maintain? Mm-hmm. How much maintenance do we have to do? So all those sort of things come into play. Yeah.
And how does that, in that comparison that you did, how does that all sort of stack up specifically in that range?
Yeah, look, the Jameson cell comes out very well because it's a high intensity cell. The footprint requirements are significantly less than if you were a mechanical cell. Pneumatic cells in general, so the Jameson cell and the other pneumatic cells, they don't require considering residence time like mechanical cells do. So what that means is you end up with a far smaller number of units required, obviously less footprint, which then becomes less CapEx, which then becomes less OpEx. It's sort of a rolling ball. Now, I will say that there was some newer technologies, like, for example, the reflux flotation cell, that their footprint was ultra small. They were even a little bit smaller than what we have. But what we again found was that they're smaller in theory, but we haven't actually seen them put into practice yet. So they may be a little bit smaller, but we don't know kind of what performance you're going to get at full scale.
I actually wanted to clarify this about the Jameson cell as well. Is it like you're looking at, when I look at pictures of it, does it come in different sizes? Again, pardon my ignorance on some of these questions, but I'm just looking at the unit and they look all similar. Are some are there different sizes of unit, different capacities, or you just scale up per unit?
Yeah, so we definitely have different sizes. So you'll see on a Jameson cell, almost like it'll almost look like an octopus coming off the middle of the cell with like octopus arms. Those are called a downcomer, and those are where our slurry is pumped through and our particle bubble interaction happens. Now those remain a fixed size to maintain certain hydrodynamics within those downcomers. And so basically those individual downcomers will have a capacity, a volumetric capacity, and as a client requires more volumetric capacity, we essentially just make the add downcomers, so increase the number of downcomers, and then make the cell body bigger to accommodate those downcomers.
Right. Okay. So now, when you're saying, what's the unit you said that was had a smaller footprint?
Like the RFC, the reflex flotation cell.
Yeah. So does the RFC? How would it scale then?
So from my understanding, like I said, there's sort of limited number of cells out there for them yet. But what it looks like is they don't have sort of the same mechanism as us, and so I don't believe that they add more downcomers like we do. They actually will add more units.
Okay.
So at a very large scale, it may end up that it becomes a larger footprint.
Now you've got
but again,
that.
it's just there's just no history there to know. But we do have cells that essentially now our biggest cell we've just designed can go up to 7,000 cubic meters per hour.
Wow.
So very, very massive.
Wow. What about this under 20 micron, the ultrafines, where it's sort of my understanding, obviously we're on here talking about the Jameson cell, but it's my understanding this is where it sort of just sorts to kind of separate out from the pack. Is that right?
Yeah, well, essentially, so I guess a little bit of a brief history is that you had the mechanical cell, and it's been very well known for a very long time that one of the main limitations of the mechanical cell is that it can't float ultrafines. And so after the mechanical cell, you had the column cell come around, and essentially what a column cell does is it adds a lot of height. So it allows more, basically, rather than mechanical agitation, it adds height. So it's a little more, basically very tall bodied cells. And then the Jameson cell come around. And so the Jameson cell sort of started these high intensity pneumatic class of cells. And essentially when the Jameson cell come around, it essentially improved on everything the column cell was doing with ultrafine flotation, but in a much smaller cell as well. So you don't need that massive amount of height because obviously if your cell's up to 15 meters high, it's significant capex. You need massive buildings, things like that. And so, the Jameson cell really does shine through in that ultrafine range. And then you do have newer sort of high intensity cells, like I was talking about the reflex flotation cell, the Concord cell. But like I said, they're sort of at the moment about 30 years behind us in terms of being established in that field.
It must be so hard to put at scale to get a new product to the market. I mean, these mines, just a mechanical cell, you got to still sell the Jameson, and now it's another one. That must be a real challenge for any sort of real investment from a mining operator.
It definitely is. And like I said, that's why we've been putting so much effort into kind of going, we're not claiming to be more established than a mechanical cell, but it's not mechanical cell and then the Jameson cell and all these other technologies. It's mechanical cell, Jameson cell, and then all those other technologies.
Right.
But you are definitely, especially in mining. Mining is a very conservative industry because companies are spending, hundreds of millions of dollars building these concentrators. And so they hire these engineering companies to do it. And an engineering company doesn't want to take a perceived risk, right? They don't want to do anything that's going to, come back and bite them. So they are very conservative. So it definitely is hard to become established. And I believe that we've now definitely become established in that ultra fine range. And we're now just trying to push that, hey, we can also do this roughing and scavenging.
That, the ESG side of it, the footprint, the OPEX, that, again, seems to me, and I always feel kind of funny when I'm on here. It's like I'm pumping the tires of the company that's on, which I am, but there's also pretty well established data on it. that's again where the Jameson Cell it's a whole different ball game, right? Because it is established. You got 500 units installed, but now you've also got this low sort of footprint in comparison. I mean, mechanical, you can't even compare it to the mechanical because it's just, it's not even in the same ballpark. Is there any sort of, I guess it would be the new technology then that is hoping to at some point compete with you in that space? Because really right now there's not much, really, right? I'm sort of stumbling around, but I'm trying to think of any sort of remote way you could call it competition in the OpEx side.
Yeah, that's right. And essentially what we're finding now is that in a lot of greenfield projects, engineering companies are actually recommending us in that fine cleaning space. And so we're kind of the go-to choice there. Because like I said, we've become established, we've proven ourselves, where some of these newer technologies just haven't done it yet. Yeah. Where we're really pushing to get in is in those rougher scavenger duties, because what that unlocks is we then have the Jameson Concentrator, where you have an entire concentrator with only 5 Jameson cells. So you have one rougher, one scavenger unit, a regrind mill, and then 3 cleaning cells, and that's your entire concentrator. And so obviously when you look at that compared to what a normal mechanical concentrator, the size of it, the footprint and the OpEx and the CapEx savings are massive, like up to 60+%.
What is a case study? Because this is a comparison, so we should be fair and give anybody who's got other units out there due. Is what is a use case where it does make sense still to go with, let's say, a mechanical or even try one of this sort of newer technology, like you said in India, if maybe the OpEx, the facility's already there, they don't need to build a huge building around it, then can you make a case for the mechanical? What would be some scenarios where you go, yeah, okay, that it makes sense to not?
Look, probably at the moment, the only place, like if you were building a new plant, I would make the argument that for sort of a standard size range up to that 300 micron ish, I think you'd have a very difficult time justifying mechanical cells. The Jameson cell just makes sense. Where you might start branching off a little bit is in the ultra coarse range. So that's sort of a new field. And that's where you're floating that greater than 300 micron range. So about 300 micron up to maybe 1 millimeter. And that's sort of a whole different mechanism. But that's where Erie's has the HydroFloat. That's far and away the most established in that field. And so, yeah, that's probably the one case I can think of where if you came to me and said, hey, we need to float 600 micron, 700 micron, can the Jameson cell, would you recommend the Jameson cell for that? And in its current stage, I would say no. We are doing a lot of R&D trying to get that particle size range up, but that's probably the main area would be the ultra coarse range.
What would be a use case for that? What for 600? What would you be processing?
Well, essentially, if you have any mineral, if you have liberation at that sort of coarse grind size, grinding is far and away the most expensive thing you'll do in your concentrator, right? It's very expensive to grind, especially as you have to grind fine. So at the moment, you kind of, with conventional flotation technology, you do have to grind down to that minimum size, maybe the 300 micron, to get the adequate performance. Where if you have a technology that can do ultra coarse, well, then you don't have to grind as fine. You're going to save a lot of OpEx there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so there's a lot of interest in it. It's basically a very new and very growing field. And like I said, I don't think you'll find a flotation company that isn't heavily researching it. And we're definitely doing that. We're piloting something at the moment.
I'm guessing if you're not already saying it, you can't get into it.
Not too much. No,
not too much. Okay.
We're trying to. I will say we're trying to do it where it's still the Jameson cell, and no, we're not trying to do a fully sort of whole new ballpark. We want to just make some modifications and alterations to an existing Jameson cell, and hope that we can lift that size range.
Something I started doing a lot more on the show, and we maybe pull this out in a highlight for people, is what are some of the good questions? And I always qualify the good questions because It's easy. It's like if you're in a sales meeting and someone says one bad thing about a one dumb question they got, and all of a sudden everybody has a story about some crazy question they got. So I like to focus on actual productive, good questions. What are some things that people bring up they want to know? I'm not an expert, so I probably haven't asked some of the really good questions you've got from engineering firms and that. What are some, maybe if there's 2 or 3 or 4, however many there are, what are some good questions that people ask that really allow you or sort of open that door to really educate people about the Jameson Cell?
Yeah, well, I think, like I said, now that we've become sort of well established in the ultra fine range, a lot of EPCMs are kind of like, okay, we understand. We understand the ultra fine, the cleaning. Yep, it works. But they kind of go, so the biggest one we get honestly from people is, okay, you're making these grand claims about you can do a full roughing and scavenging circuit with only 2 cells. Can you prove it? Do you have any case studies? Have you installed any of these big roughing cells anywhere? They just, like, honestly, they just want to see the data, and at the moment we've got it, and we're really just focused on distributing it, getting it out there, because to be honest, like in the mining industry and especially with engineering companies, is they aren't really interested in the sales pitch. They aren't really interested in anything that I've got to say. They want to know, they want me to show them, prove it.
Right.
Let's see this thing run. Where can we go look at one of these running? And that's really the big thing.
Do you have like a resource hub on your website for those kind of specs, or is it a direct conversation to like get access to some of these specifications and case studies and things like that?
No, we've definitely got a resource hub on the website. We've got lots of papers on there, lots of case studies. But then we also do welcome, if there's something that isn't answered on our website, just send us a message, and it definitely gets forwarded basically to my team, to the direct team. And we do answer a lot of questions, and there is no silly questions either. Like you said, that everything from very basic up to very technical, we sort of get everything, and we're happy to answer. We're a relatively small team compared to some of the big guys, and so you do get quite a personal reply, and pretty good relationship building as well.
You just outed yourself, because now I know you don't watch the show, because you said there's no such thing as a silly question, and I have proven that is not the case over the years. Just completely side note, are you someone who gets to travel to some of these sites? You just mentioned giving people site visits. Do you get to go to any of these places? You're kind of all over the world with 500 installs, so.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I said, with this new solutions team, we travel actually a lot. We do a lot of the frontline test work. So when those clients sort of say, hey, this is all very nice, we really liked your conference presentation, come and prove it.
Right.
They send me or one of our team to go and actually prove it. And I'm actually about 12 hours away from flying out to India. So
wow.
To do some more test work. So yeah, definitely a lot of travel. We see a lot of different clients all over the world.
Obviously you're not going to disclose too, but like going out to a place like India, is it similar? Like what kind of environment is that to get out? I'm assuming like every mine, they're remote. So it must be a bit of a trek once you land.
It is a bit of a trek. Yeah, it's the clients are great. Very modern facilities, very large facilities, and like you said, though, it is in the middle of nowhere, so it is sort of a couple of domestic flights and then a long drive, but you meet a lot of interesting people and then see a lot of interesting things.
I'm not going to do the reverse of what's your most disliked country or anything like that. What's a couple of your favorite countries or favorite places you visited and went, wow, this is something different, this is interesting?
Well, I've spent actually a lot of time in the last year between 2 sort of very unique countries, Uzbekistan and India. And yeah, very, very unique, very different though. And yeah, I think it's just interesting seeing all the different cultures, different ways people live. So some ways similar to us, some ways very different, trying a lot of very unique food. And getting a lot of different hospitality as well. So it's pretty interesting.
Can you? I love all kinds of food, and I've got an incredibly weak. It's like I love hot sauce, but I can't handle it. I eat it, but I have to like turn away so everybody doesn't have to see my nose running and the mess I turn into. But I keep going. I just love it. But how did your stomach do with all the foods? I just got back from the Philippines. Love food in the Philippines, but after about a week, I'm struggling.
No, I do pretty well. I don't go anything too insane. I sort of ask, hey, how like, is this spicy for you? If it's spicy for the locals, then I probably back off a little. That's a good indication. Is if you ask them if it's spicy and they say yes, then maybe take it easy.
I went into an African store about 2 years ago, and there was a hot sauce that I wanted, and so I bought it. He's like, "Are you sure?" He asked me about 5 times. Yeah. I'm like, "Yes, I want to buy it." It was so funny, and he was serious. He's like, "Are you like, you really sure?" Yes. No, I'll give it a try. I paid for it.
We have a lot of Indians in Australia, and when you order and you say, I want it spicy, they say, well, do you want it India spicy or Australia spicy?
Right, exactly.
That's the level, yeah.
Yeah, when you're going when you're going to these sites, is it like, what does the training look like? Are you there for a month? Is it a couple days? What does it take to onboard an operation like this?
So what we have is we essentially have these fully functional pilot units that essentially they come in like a standard shipping container. You unload it on your site. You plug it in. You and then whatever stream you want in the plant, you send feed to this pilot rig. And what we will do is we actually will go in for generally it's like 5 to 10 days, and we'll actually get the team on site there, and we'll train them how to run the cell, how to collect data, where that sort of makes us a little bit different than other companies. Sometimes companies are very closed and reserved. They kind of say, we'll do the test work and give you the results. We want the clients to actually do it themselves, see it, touch the froth, because it's very hard to kind of question the results when you collected it and your lab gave you the numbers.
So you're training them on a unit that's different from the actual one that will be in the operation. Then you're basically a test unit. Is that
it's a test unit, but the fundamentals of the Jameson Cell are exactly the same. So that's one of, again, another sort of unique point for us is that inside that downcomer on the test unit, the exact same things are happening that are happening with a cell our cells that take 7,000 cubic meters per hour. So once they learn sort of, it takes a little bit getting the head around, okay, this is what it's, because it is very different from conventional flotation.
Right.
But once you get them to wrap their head around the operation, then when you scale up to full scale, the results for one scale up 1-to-1. So if the results they get in the lab on the pilot unit, we guarantee they'll scale up 1-to-1, and that's exactly what you'll get at full scale. But also the operation is actually quite similar. Obviously, it's more automated, more high tech at full scale.
Right, but it's enough to get the base. But the
actual fundamentals are exactly the same.
Last question, though, I have is for how many of these units are you going, just rough percentage, are going into new operations as opposed to being integrated into existing?
Well, I would say probably in the previous maybe 5 or so years, a lot of our business was repeat business. So clients had put in, a Jameson Cell in one duty, and they're going, hey, we actually love this thing. We're going to put in another one. But what we found the last couple of years is we are getting a lot more greenfield stuff. So a lot of piloting we're doing is on sites that have no Jameson Cells. A lot of them are existing plants. So, for example, in like Central Asia, like in Uzbekistan stuff, a lot of them are very old plants where you've got 100 mechanical cells. They're super old, and they want to kind of just retrofit a Jameson Cell in. And obviously, because of the small footprint, we're able to do that. So, yeah, I would say that it's changed a lot in the last few years, and a lot of our clients now are new clients, especially at the piloting stage.
Yep. Carter, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope we do it again. It is always a pleasure to have Glencore. And one of the reasons is obviously a great company, such an established brand in the mining world, but also the work behind the scenes that your team does to actually put these presentations together to not just be promotional, but actually educational to the audience. It's very much appreciated by myself, but also the audience. And we see that from the engagement numbers. So thank you very much, and we hope we do it again soon.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I'd happily come on again.
And thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you to everybody who supports the show. Make sure to subscribe. I wish I remembered to say that at the beginning of these episodes, but if you're still watching, please hit that subscribe button. Go check out Glencore. There'll be plenty of links in the description below if you haven't already seen it pop out on your screen. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.